Back in 2015, the landscape leadership team met Marcus Sheridan. He was putting on a workshop that was called They Ask, You Answer 5 Keys to Content Marketing Success. And boy, has it been successful. We've applied these strategies to clients all across the country in all kinds of different green industry companies, lawn care, commercial landscaping, landscape design build. It's generated thousands of website visits per month for some clients and hundreds, even sometimes thousands of leads for some of our clients. This works, and I want you to take a few minutes and hear from Marcus himself about why this is so powerful, and also give some bonus tips on how this can solve some big problems that you might have in your sales process. Hey, Marcus. I am so thankful that you joined us today. I personally really appreciate They Ask You Answer and the Big Five, because one of my tasks for the last, 4 or 5 years has been coming up with blog topics for clients. And as you can imagine, when you work with so many clients, you get about 50 or 60 blog posts a month. And to try to come up with unique topics every single month is a huge, huge challenge. And so your framework has personally benefited me, and it's also benefited a lot of our clients that have gotten website traffic and helped to solve some problems in the sales cycle as well. And so I want you to take some time today and break it down for maybe some of the viewers or listeners that have never heard of They Ask You Answer, your book,
Sure.
or the Big
Yeah.
Five, and tell us briefly, what is that?
So, to start, they ask you answer comes from my experience owning a swimming pool company, almost losing my business in 2009. And then because of that stress and that pain, really just learning about the internet and about today's buyer, right? And all the stuff that I read online about inbound marketing, content marketing, all that stuff. Really, what I saw was, Marcus, if you just obsess over your customers' questions and you're willing to address them well through text, through video on your website, you might save your business, right? And so that's what I decided to do. And that's what we did. And make long story short, we became the most trafficked swimming pool website in the world by really addressing our customers' questions. But it starts, Chad, with your point of obsessing over those questions. It's not just the questions though. It's the questions, worries, fears, issues, concerns, etc. Right? It's
Mm.
all the things that they're going through and the emotions that they're going through. I don't think it stops there either, though, because there's certainly a content strategy side to it. But I also like to point out that when a company is living the philosophy of they ask you answer, it's also a mindset of if our customers want to learn it a certain way, are we willing to teach it that way, right? So, in other words, it doesn't matter if you or I like video, it doesn't matter if you or I are comfortable on video. Question is, does the marketplace does it want to see video? Well, if that's the case, then we need to learn to show the thing in video format and just not in text, right? That's another example of how that might look, right? Especially in a visual industry. And then the final component I would say of they ask you answer, as it's really evolved over time, is are we willing to sell it the way the customer wants to buy it? And that's the thing that a lot of companies aren't willing to do. And you're actually seeing this a lot more in the green industry, just like anything to do with um, landscaping. You certainly see a lot of lawn services, and that's that quicker self-selection capability of consumers to come to your site to make choices without necessarily having to have a salesperson out, right? To measure the square footage of their site and see exactly what it would cost, right? That type of thing. And so that's the willingness to evolve the way that the buyer, the consumer of today, wants to buy, right? And so you say, what's the big five? Well, the big five are the five subjects that buyers, regardless of industry, service, product, it doesn't matter, B2B, B2C, are obsessed with that businesses tend to not want to talk about, right? And so once somebody really starts to look at the big five, they're like, oh yeah, I've done that like a million times online. I do it every day, over and over again. So the five are as follows. Number one, as buyers, as consumers, we're obsessed with how much something costs. We want to understand pricing, we want to understand rates, etc. That's number one, cost. Number two is buyers were obsessed with problems slash negatives. What's interesting, Chad, is once we are actually serious about buying something, that's when we researched how it could blow up in our face, right? That's when we start to care.
Do I have to
So,
do this?
right, yeah. Do I have to, or what are the problems with, or what are the drawbacks to, or what are the negatives of, or somebody told me that, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's a million of these things that we've heard, so we have to verify whether or not it's true. And so those are problems. Number three is comparisons. We love to compare stuff online because we want to feel like we've done enough of a comparative analysis so as to make the right choice.
Right.
Want to convince ourselves that we're getting a good value. Number four, we're obsessed with reviews. We love to look at what everybody's saying about such and such thing, whatever that thing is, service, product, right? And then number five, we are obsessed with the best. We love to research the best. You could, best Mexican restaurant, your town, right? Best landscaping companies for, and then you could choose a very specific niche within the landscaping space. Right? These are the things that people do. And they do it all day, every day. And like I said, buyers are obsessed with it. Businesses don't want to talk about it. And because of that, it creates this wall of distrust between themselves and the ones that they're trying to win over. It's a paradox of wants, and businesses have to get with it.
Yeah. It's interesting as I look back over my last 4 or 5 years in helping, like half a dozen to a dozen clients when I started, and now a couple dozen clients write this content. We have this exercise, like where we know what's going to support their business with the content to create, but we like to get interaction from our clients. And so we always do this thing where I say, okay, here comes the next quarter. Here's what I'm suggesting to drive these certain types of leads. Do you guys have any ideas? And I would say 75% are like, no, we just trust you. And I constantly keep reminding clients over and over again, because some of these are clients that, we've written content for 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah.
We've covered all their competitors. We've covered price in like a variety of different fashions. We have price calculators, instant quotes, those
Yep.
types of things on the website. And a lot of their competitors are now doing things like who's the best company, and you got Thumbtack and Home Advisor, and all of them are
Hmm.
throwing those things out there. And so what I love to do is get feedback from our clients about what are specific problems, like real problems. I was watching this master class with Daniel Pink yesterday. He was talking about negotiation, and one of the things that he said is put a face on your problem. And our customers, the sales team dealing with prospects and customers, that's a real face. And if you can write that in content or have it in a video, it's super, super powerful. So I thought what would be really productive for us today is to kind of move past the big five. I mean, if by all means, if you haven't been creating written content or video content
Hmm.
on your lawn care landscaping website, do that. But if you're ready for like next level stuff, that's what I want to talk to Marcus today about, is what are specific problems in the sales process. If you're getting leads, but you're closing like 10, 15% of them, if you're getting leads, or how can you make sales people's lives better, or ultimately your customers' lives better? How can you uncover these problems in the sales process when you're working, maybe internally with your sales team, or if you're an agency like us that's trying to get that information back from clients?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things going on, right? There's there's the so we have the fears that buyers have, actual
Mhm.
customers have, right? And there's a litany of those. And then there's the flaws of the sales process, right? Which is its own issue. And we could spend quite a bit of time talking about either one of those. So you tell me, which one do you want to attack first, Chad?
Let's talk about the flaws of the sales process.
Okay. So the flaws of the sales process. Typically, in any type of home improvement space, right? Which certainly landscaping is that. There's some major issues that we consistently see. And if you read They Ask You Answer, you really apply what it says on the sales side of the book, because
Mhm.
two main sections of the book, there's the marketing side and the sales side. So if you're doing it the right way, you don't approach customer conversations like everybody else. An example of this is what we call in the book assignment selling. So assignment selling, as you well know, Chad, is the process of integrating content very intentionally in the sales process so as to move people either down or out of that traditional sales funnel as quickly as possible, right? Now, most companies don't do this well. And they might say, well, yeah, sure, we send them a brochure or whatever the thing is. It's, no, 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 no. No, there's an actual process here that you want to follow. Now, the way that you know that there's generally an assignment selling problem is if you say to a salesperson, do you ever get questions that from a prospect, from a potential customer, where you say to yourself, how do they not know this? Like, are you serious? Are you really asking me this right now? Do you ever get a question that makes you just roll your eyes and say, oh my gosh, this is going to be a wasted 60 to 90 minutes of my life. I can't believe I made this trip out here. It's like if you talk to any salesperson, usually you're going to say, oh yeah. And if you said, what are the questions that immediately tell you that you're screwed?
Yeah.
That this is going to be a waste of time. So let me give you an example. It used to be when I was early in the game of selling pools. If I got into somebody's house, Chad, and they said, okay, so what types of pools do you carry again? Do you carry the concrete or the fiberglass?
Red
I'm screwed.
flag.
Done. If they said, so tell me again the difference between concrete and fiberglass? Done. Done. They still haven't come close to figuring out even what type of pool they want. And so I can easily spend an hour trying to justify how fiberglass may or may not be the right fit for them. And that should have been done. And this really aligns with all the trends anyway, because the studies have shown, Chad, as you well know, that today's buyer is generally 70 to 80% through the sales cycle by the time they actually talk to a salesperson. Now, a lot of that is on it's their own efforts and work. But ideally, the company doesn't leave that up to chance. And so when you talk to someone and set up an appointment, a sales appointment, you cannot just assume that they're going to do the homework, that they're going to do the research, that they're going to be well informed. And so, for example, somebody calls you up and says, hey, Chad, I'd love for you to come out to my house because I've got some landscaping needs, and you give me an estimate. That would be great. Okay, who hasn't gotten that call? Everybody's gotten that call.
Yeah.
But the magic is what comes next. Like,
Right.
what do you say next? Yeah, I'm really looking forward to being out there on Friday. See you then. Because if that is your vibe, you are literally no different whatsoever than your competitors. Now, granted, I know things are a little bit busier during COVID. And so if you show up, that might give you a leg up, or even call them back, that might give you a leg up. But let's really stand out, people. And besides, this like COVID rainbow ain't going to last forever. And we're going to get to the other side
Yeah.
where the home improvement industry goes back to normal and you're scratching for deals. And so when you're scratching for deals, you got to know what to bring to the fight. So, for example, what might that sound? So Chad calls me up and says, yo, Marcus, checking out your website. Would love to come out. Love if you could come out and give me a quote for this landscaping that I'd like have done in my backyard this this fall. And so instead of saying, yeah, sure, I can't wait, now I say something to the effect of, Chad, I'd love to come out to your house, but keep in mind you're getting ready to spend a lot of money, and if you're going to spend a lot of money, I know you don't want to make any mistakes. And so as to make sure you don't make any mistakes, here's what we're going to do. So as we're talking on the phone right now, I'm going to send you two things via email. First thing I'm going to send you is a video of what a typical project will look like. So you've already mentioned to me that you're going to get some pavers, you're probably going to get some walls, you might get a few other things. So I want you to see what that looks like so that when I come out to your house on Friday, you're not saying, what does this look like? No, I want you to know, you need to know. So you're going to see this. Now, the second thing I'm going to send you is a guide. Now, this buying guide is great because it's going to answer all these nitty gritty questions that you really need to know before I come out. Let me give you an example of this. Let's just take pavers, for example. There's a multiplicity of paver choices that you have. Do you know which one is the best for you? Well, this guide is going to answer that. Furthermore, there's a multiplicity of installation styles that we see contractors using out there in the marketplace. Some, as you might imagine, are better than others. This guide's going to clearly distinguish between those types of installation styles so that you know, okay, what I'm paying for is built to last. Now, this guide's a little bit long, but I promise it'll be well worth your time. Now, Chad, will you take the time to review that video and read that guide before I come out to your house on Friday? Now, you don't need to answer that, Chad, because you're going to say yes anyway. And at which point, I know that this person is dramatically more informed. We did a study back in like 2013, and I found with my swimming pool company, which is, just a sister, industry to the landscaping industry, right?
Sure.
That if somebody reads 30 or more pages of our website before the initial sales appointment, the closing rates are 80%. If they don't read 30 or more pages, it's less than that. The closing rates are 25%. Well, guess what? The average swimming pool salesperson closes 1 out of 4 deals if they go into the home. So, in other words, if they didn't hit those 30 pages, that meant that we were getting the same results as everybody else. But if they read 30 or more, now all of a sudden we had a 300+% increase in closing rates, which is pretty astounding simply by them consuming more content, working further down the funnel. And oh, by the way, the beauty behind this too is yes, sometimes people are going to read your stuff or research your stuff and they're going to say, you know what, it appears that we're not a good fit. And you're going to say, for the win,
Yeah,
because
right.
now they know, everybody wins. I've never talked to anybody that's in sales, especially in-home sales, that said, yeah, I really want to have more sales practice in homes. I, I don't think it works that way. We want to go close deals. That's what we want to do. We don't want to just go practice selling. Practice selling sucks. We need to generate revenue for ourselves, our families, and our companies, which is why we can't be so passive about the education level of our prospect. And last thing I'll say about this, there's this psychological phenomena called sunk costs. And sunk costs affect every facet of life. You invest a lot of something into someone or something, and then you'll tend to stay with them because of how much you've sunk into that thing.
Yeah.
Well, the more the prospect does for you, the higher the sunk costs. And so if they've invested more time researching your stuff, doing the things that you've asked them to do, the better off you are. Let me give you one more example, Chad, because I've got to do this. I just got to say this. When COVID hit, we shifted to a much more virtual selling model. I think we were the first company in the swimming pool industry to do all video sales calls first. In fact, we get a deposit before we go out to the house. Now you might say, how does that happen? Couldn't happen in landscaping, can't happen in pools. Same, essentially, we're talking the same thing. You got
Yep.
yards. Everybody says, yeah, my yard's flat and it's got a 4-foot fall. Like, we know how this deal works. So you got to see the yard. Well, what do? Well, what we did is we created a video that taught people how to take proper photos of their backyard so that we could see exactly what we need to see so as to ascertain enough information to be able to give them a solid quote that was at least 90% there. And of course there was going to be some, let's make sure we got refined measurements on this or that once we get there. But the point is, by teaching them, creating that video and teaching them to take those photos and them taking said photos and sending to us, when they weren't doing this with other pool companies, their sunk cost, their investment was greater in us. And I wonder if somebody's got a 10 or 15, 20% closing rate, okay, what are they doing wrong? Because let me assure you, if you're listening to this, your closing rate, if it's that low, you are doing something wrong. It's not the marketplace. It's not because there's a lot of competition. You are doing something wrong. And it's not because you're more expensive. Don't lie to yourself and give yourself that reason of, well, clearly it's because we're more expensive. I can tell you, we are the most expensive fiberglass pool company in Virginia by far. And we don't have an issue with closing rates. And so the point is, you got to take the time to refine your sales process better. And we've got to use digital and content as part of that.
Yeah, I think the quick answer to every landscape problem, sales problem, is we need more leads. And you and I know that more leads, that just creates more headaches. It's
You can
more
have a
about,
point of diminishing returns with too many
yeah,
leads. And a lot of
ex-
landscapers have realized that, like, oh my gosh, I'm so overwhelmed,
yeah,
over the course of COVID, weren't able to get back to as many people as they necessarily wanted to, or as timely as they wanted to, or you got too much work, or you said yes to too many jobs, and more businesses die of indigestion than because of starvation,
right.
which is pretty
Good point.
crazy if you think about it.
So we talked about assignment selling and like, okay, these are the things that the content you have to consume and we should create for like that initial qualification before I set foot on the property. What about, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that are watching or listening to this to be like, wow, I can't do that. Like, that's too much to ask. And that's a whole other conversation, how to motivate those people. I think the numbers, what you talked
I just
about.
got to say, if you can't do that, you're in the wrong line of work. It means you have to really check yourself as a professional, because if you've produced the content, if you've produced it, remember this, folks: the rights of a teacher are greater than he or she who does not teach. So because I'm a prolific teacher, I have earned the right to ask people to do things with that information that my competitors can't do, because I've taken the time to do that. So thus they have to take the time to do that. If they do not, we do not play. And because of that too, the the hierarchy of the relationship is not a situation where they're doing me a favor by meeting with them. It's I'm also doing them a favor. Wow, they can meet with one of the foremost subject matter experts in this field, whatever that thing is. That's the idea. Your status as a salesperson should never be lower than the person you're selling to. If your status is lower, that means you're afraid to ask them to do certain things, like what we just talked about, assignment selling. And when you have a status problem, an authority problem in the relationship, generally you have terrible closing rates, you have smaller margins, and you have a problematic business.
I agree with you. And I do that myself because, like we get people that ask us to have meetings with us. And if I just obliged everybody that had a meeting, I would spend a lot of time every week. And people are actually thankful when I sort out a few of those details, like ask them to check a couple pages on our website or watch a video and realize that maybe we aren't a good fit, or at least not now. And my perspective is a lot of times company owners are just busy professionals, and they're glad they didn't waste their time. Um, what
100%.
about what about so I'm going to go to this question I was going to ask you is like, what about, all right, so that's a problem of qualifying your lead, making sure you're dealing with somebody that's invested into the process already, and you go out for a consultation because they've either paid a fee, or if you don't do that, at least they're invested in activity. What about later in the sales process? Because like landscape design build, a lot of times those, you're talking a month or two between the time they call you to the time you might give them a presentation. What's some problems that you can solve with content past the consultation before you close the deal?
So, one thing to consider about this is, if you've been in business any period of time, especially landscape design, there's a good chance that you have built a list of disclaimers into your agreement, uh, because you're smart and you have to protect yourself and you have to protect the homeowner from their own ignorance sometimes, right? And so, one of the best ways to, one of the mistakes that people sometimes make is when they're signing a contract, that's when they're, you know, vomiting all the things that could go wrong at that time. Now, you think, well, but I got them to say yes, and so then it's harder for them to back out. Well, it shouldn't, and it doesn't really work that way. You're better off talking about things on the front end and preparing them well. So, an example of that would be like, you know, what on a so like for example, what are some potential hidden expenses of a project that they
Good
hadn't
point.
thought about before, right? So that's a really good one because you know, just because whomever, Miss Utility or whoever it's called in your state, comes out and marks, doesn't mean that they found everything. Or you got the plat, and it doesn't mean that it actually has positioned where the septic actually is. So these are things that come up, and so that's a type of thing that you want to teach someone about. The other thing is, you know, I hear contractors complain about other contractors, and I always say the same thing. So, are you better than them? Well, yeah, I'm better than them. What specifically makes you better than them? Well, I do this, 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 and this. And they don't do this, 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 this. Okay. Have you ever really clearly, in a written way, defined that for the world to see so that they understand the difference between what is a good and a bad contractor or an average contractor? Because if you have not, it's on you if they choose the cheaper guy. It's on you. Because what happens all the time, and of course you understand this, Chad, because you've written a lot of pricing stuff, but I'm just talking generally speaking, this whole idea of what to look for. Look, where in elementary, middle, high school, university were you taught how to hire a landscaping contractor?
Nobody.
Never.
Even if your parents did it, they probably didn't tell you what to do either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People don't know this. They don't know how it works. It's no different than the second somebody is told how much their retaining wall is going to cost, their eyes blow out of their head. 99% of the time. Why? They cannot come close to conceptualizing these things unless you teach them. Oh, it's just a couple stacked blocks, isn't it? They have no idea. Yet we allow the eyes to continue to blow out of their head again and again and again when we meet with them. 35,000 just for the wall? Are you what? Why? Why? That shouldn't happen. It doesn't need to happen. You know what? If a contractor, see, this is the type of stuff, and I know you've done it before, chap, I'm going to say it anyway. If you're really smart as a contractor, as a landscaper, you would produce a video that says, why are retaining walls so expensive?
Yeah.
And
Good
then,
topic.
great topic. And then you would show the process of building a retaining wall and what the prep looks like. And let's say hypothetically, if there's any matting that's used or there's any additional materials or
Right.
just different techniques that are used. And then all of a sudden, person's like, oh, geez, I had no idea that's how much it entailed. But we don't do this. Partly because Hollywood makes it out like all blue collar people and jobs are ignoramuses. That's a whole other side subject,
Yeah. Thanks a
right?
lot.
And so if you don't educate them on how this is a highly skilled and technical labor that you're doing, then nobody else will. And they will be led into ignorance because of the fact that you haven't addressed it.
I think you used a really key word there. You said led. That I think that's what enables us to be, you said teachers a lot of times, but leaders really in leading prospects, uh, the customers that are invested with us into what the right process is here to learn, to evaluate other types of companies that you might be considering. And when you create content, then you become the measure that everybody compares to. And all these
Yeah.
competitors, they're not even creating content, or they're writing articles like, what is a retaining wall, like
Yep.
this just very low level content, or these are the different types. And instead, now you're positioning yourself as an expert because you're going light years past what everyone else is doing in content, if they're doing anything at all. And then when they ask that contractor, the contractor is left with, well, yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, that's true. Or they have to explain, like in this retaining wall example, they have to explain, well, yeah, I don't do it that way. And it creates all the
So
suspicion.
let me give you
So
a great example of that, Chad. Used to be when I first started 20 years ago in the pool industry, fiberglass pool industry, all fiberglass pools were built in sand. Okay. Why? Generally, sand's cheaper. It's just easier to work with. And, fiberglass pools in many ways were East Coast pools, like you saw them in the Outer Banks, lots of sand out there. So there's all these reasons for it. But if anybody has half a wit, they realize that sand is not a very good base for structures. In fact, the Bible talks about this 2,000 years ago. You don't build your house on sand. So this is not new. Yet, fiberglass pools were built on sand. It's dumb as bricks. And so, just like pavers, right? We should have a solid foundation. In this case, we should have like a 3/4 stone that gets laid down as the base and as the backfill to your fiberglass pool. Well, people didn't know that. And so talked a lot about it. I talked a lot about why it matters, how you should backfill it, and just really just did different videos on it, just demos and everything. Before I knew it, I had like contractors from all over the country saying, Marcus, you keep screwing me up, man. I mean, I got this homeowner here that says they got to have gravel. That's going to cost me $600 more per pool. I'm like,
Love the voice.
you think that's my problem there, bro? Because last I looked, if you're doing sand, you deserve anything that comes your way because you're being incredibly irresponsible. You're clearly not being a fiduciary to the customer in this case. So do it the right way and stop complaining. So 90% of all pools when we started were built on sand. Today, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, Chad, 90% of fiberglass pools are built on gravel. 20
Impressive.
years.
It's impressive.
That's how
Yeah.
you change an industry. But
Yeah.
you
And
got to be willing to say it. And that's how you become a leader. And, did a lot of like contractors say, that's not nose kid. Who that pool, that Marcus pool guy pisses me off. I got that, man. I got that for years. And I knew I was doing it right. Look, if you haven't annoyed your competitors, you're probably not leaning into what homeowners want nearly as much as you should.
good point. Annoy your competitors and become a leader. That's great advice. So thank you for
I
that.
actually use that as a litmus test. Seriously though, Chad, like sometimes I'll say, I haven't annoyed any competitors for a while. It means I'm not being very innovative right now.
I'm going to try to
What's wrong?
figure out who I can irritate this week. No, I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
well, and it's no, it's just like it's not about irritating them. It's them seeing you do something and say, "Freak, he did that. He
No,
can't
I got to
do
do it.
that. Why are we not doing that? Oh, screw, dude." Right? That's the goal.
Yeah, it is. Hey, I appreciate this. It's important. We don't have a ton of time, but I'm sure we could talk about this for hours. But to lead your prospect and your customers, and also just the point of leading your industry. You talked in the beginning of this discussion about charging consultations, not going out until you get certain buy-in, that sort of thing. That's opportunity and challenge for everyone that's listening to this, that stop following the status quo and do what you know is right. Because the more of us that start doing this, the more consumers realize, like you said, with the sand and the base and all that, that this is the way things happen in the landscape industry. And if
Yes.
a guy wants to give me a design build proposal and he isn't giving it to me and making me pay for it, then maybe it's not that great or that valuable to begin with. And so this takes all of us to kind of come together and do what's best for the industry as a whole. And some of that is some of the things that you're sharing in this book, but also in your next book, which I want to give you opportunity to tease as well. Because one of the things, if you follow Marcus on LinkedIn and watch any of his videos, visit his website, one of the things you'll see that he's super passionate about is video. He's mentioned it a few times in our discussion today. Video in the respect of using it in the sales process. And I know your new book, The Visual Sale, How to Use Videos to Explode Sales, Drive Marketing, and Grow Business in a Virtual World. I want to give you just a brief chance to plug your book and explain people what they'd get out of it if they buy that.
Well, studies show this year 85% of the content we consume online is going to be video based. If you have teenagers, just watch them. It's stunning that they're just not going to Google. They just don't. We're like their search engine really is YouTube. The way they learn is YouTube, and never in the history of the world is the saying "seeing is believing" more true than it is right now for buyers. And so, regardless of, like I said earlier, our opinions on video or how comfortable we are in video. The buyer wants it. And within this industry, that is landscape design, I mean, you just is there any more visual of an industry? Folks, we've got to show it. We've got to show it better than we have. You got to view yourself as a media company. How do you do it? How do you make it a major part of sales and marketing? Well, the visual sale will show you how to do that, how to create that culture within your organization. It's a very practical guide. You'll be flooded with ideas, just like you would be if you read They Ask You Answer. So I'd say start with They Ask You Answer if you haven't read it yet, because it's never too late. Some people thinking, yeah, but so many of my competitors have already gotten on this train. Folks, come on now. Don't base decisions on what your competitors are or are not doing. Base it on, would the buyer want this? The answer is yes. So let that be your litmus. Let that be your compass, right? And so visual sale, make sure you check it out. And like you said, Chad, if you're on LinkedIn, you're listening to this, follow me on LinkedIn because I'm a dang good follow.
Yep, Marcus is. I comment on his stuff all the time, and I even disagree with you sometimes, which
Yeah,
I
which is
appreciate.
good.
Your It's not fundamental disagreements, but we like to argue back and forth a little bit or challenge each other. And
Yeah, it's
Marcus,
healthy. It's a lost art.
Marcus, you have a great way of just kind of pointing out the obvious that isn't so obvious to business owners. And so I really appreciate your posts on there and just challenging people to be good business people, good leaders, just good human beings in general. So I really appreciate that. If you want to get in contact with Marcus, I believe your website address is marcussheridan.com, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
MarcusSheridan.com. You can even reach out to me. If you got a question, you can reach out to me directly. Marcus at MarcusSheridan.com. Easy email to remember there. But yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Chad, it was great chatting with you, man. I love what you're doing, educating an industry. Um, this is important times. We're pivotal times right now. So people like you make a big difference, laying the foundation so these businesses can have a solid future and financial peace for years to come.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks, Marcus. You have a great day.
You too.